Hey, my name is Angela, and I need to tell you about something that happened to me and my roommate Emma on one of the scariest nights of my life. I swear I can still feel the chill from that evening, and every time it rains, I can't help but remember what happened. This all took place last year during the fall semester of college. Emma and I were living in a dorm on campus, your typical college dorm. Nothing fancy, just a small room with two twin beds, a couple of desks, and one tiny closet we had to share. Our dorm building was kind of old, a little run down, and had a creepy vibe at night, especially when it rained. And let me tell you, it rained a lot in October. It was one of those cold, miserable nights when the sky was completely covered in dark clouds and the rain was coming down in sheets. You know the type of night where the wind howls through the trees and everything outside looks blurry and distorted because of the downpour. It was a Wednesday, and both Emma and I had spent the day cramming for midterms. By the time the rain started, we were both exhausted, and all we wanted to do was collapse into bed. But things didn't go as planned. The night started off normal enough. Emma was sitting at her desk, headphones on, trying to get through her study notes. I was lying on my bed, scrolling through my phone, too tired to focus on anything. The rain was pounding against the window, and every once in a while there'd be a flash of lightning, followed by a low rumble of thunder. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary, just another stormy night in the middle of fall. But then, around 10:30, something strange happened. I heard a knock at the door. It was soft at first, barely audible over the sound of the rain. At first I thought I was imagining it, but then it came again. 3 distinct knocks. Emma didn't seem to notice it, still lost in her notes. So I got up and walked over to the door. I figured it was one of the girls from down the hall, maybe needing something or just bored and looking for someone to talk to. But when I opened the door, no one was there. I stepped into the hallway, peering down both directions, but it was completely empty. The lights in the hall flickered slightly, and the old pipes made that strange clanking sound they always did during storms. I thought maybe someone had knocked on the wrong door and left, so I shrugged it off and went back inside. "Who was it?" Emma asked, taking off her headphones. "No one," I said. "Probably just one of the girls messing around." Emma nodded and went back to her work, and I tried to get comfortable again, but something about that knock had unsettled me. I couldn't explain why, but it gave me a weird feeling, like someone had been standing right outside our door, watching us. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just tired, and it was probably nothing. But then, about 20 minutes later, it happened again. 3 soft knocks, just like before. This time, Emma heard it too. We both looked at each other, confused. I got up again, faster this time, and threw open the door. Again, the hallway was completely empty. No one was there. The rain was still coming down hard, and the wind outside had picked up, making the whole building creak. The flickering lights in the hall only added to the eerie atmosphere. "I swear someone knocked," Emma said, standing up from her desk and walking over to me. "Did you see anyone?" "No," I said, feeling my unease grow. "There's no one out there." We both stood in the doorway for a minute, listening, but all we could hear was the rain and the distant rumble of thunder. After a while, we closed the door, locking it this time. Emma looked as uneasy as I felt. "Maybe it's someone from one of the other floors," Emma suggested. "You know, just messing with people." "Maybe," I agreed, but something about the knocks felt intentional, like they were meant for us. We tried to go back to what we were doing, but now the room felt different, heavier, like something was off. Every creak in the building made me jump, and I kept glancing at the door, half expecting someone to knock again. And then just after 11 o'clock, the power went out. The whole dorm was plunged into darkness, and for a second, neither of us moved. We just sat there, frozen, listening to the rain hammering against the window. The only light came from the occasional flash of lightning, which would momentarily illuminate the room in harsh, white light before everything went black again. "Great," Emma muttered. "Now what?" I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, casting a narrow beam of light around the room. The darkness felt oppressive, and the rain seemed louder now, as if it was right outside, ready to come crashing in. Emma used her phone's light too, and we both tried to figure out what to do next. "I'll check the hall," I said, standing up and heading for the door. I was trying to be brave, but my heart was pounding in my chest. "Be careful," Emma said, her voice tense. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, which was pitch black except for the occasional flicker of lightning. The emergency lights hadn't kicked on yet, so the entire floor was cloaked in shadows. My phone's flashlight barely cut through the darkness, but I could see enough to know that the hall was empty. I was about to turn back when I noticed something strange. There were wet footprints on the floor. Bare footprints, like someone had been walking through the hallway without shoes. The prints started just a few doors down from ours and trailed off toward the far end of the hall, disappearing into the darkness. A chill ran down my spine. I stepped back into the room and closed the door quickly, locking it again. Emma looked at me, her face pale in the dim light of her phone. "What is it?" she asked. "There are footprints," I whispered. "Wet footprints, like someone's been walking around out there." Emma's eyes widened, and she stood up, moving closer to me. "Are you serious?" I nodded, feeling my stomach twist. Something wasn't right. Who would be walking around the dorm in the middle of a storm, barefoot? Just then, we heard it again. Knock. Knock. This time the sound was louder, more insistent, like whoever or whatever was knocking wanted to make sure we heard them. Emma and I stared at the door, neither of us moving. My heart was racing, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I held my breath, listening, but the knocks didn't come again. "I don't like this," Emma whispered. "What if it's some kind of prank?" I shook my head. "I don't think this is a prank, Emma." We both stood there in silence, trying to decide what to do. The power was still out, the rain was still pouring down outside, and the hallway was filled with those eerie, wet footprints. Every instinct I had was screaming at me not to open the door again, but I knew we couldn't just stay locked in our room all night. Suddenly, there was a loud thud against the door, like someone had thrown themselves against it. Emma let out a small gasp, and I backed away, my flashlight shaking in my hand. Whoever was out there was trying to get in. "Angela," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "What do we do?" I didn't know. My mind was racing, trying to think of some kind of plan, but all I could focus on was the sound of the rain and the knocking that had started again. This time, faster and more desperate. Then, without warning, the knocking stopped. The room fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of the storm outside. For a long moment, neither of us moved. We just stood there, staring at the door, waiting for something to happen. When nothing did, I finally mustered the courage to speak. "I think it's gone," I whispered. But as soon as the words left my mouth, there was a sound, a soft, dragging noise like something heavy being pulled across the floor just outside our door. It was faint, almost drowned out by the rain, but it was unmistakable. Someone or something was still out there. Emma grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "We can't stay here," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We need to get out." I nodded, knowing she was right. We couldn't stay trapped in the room, not with whatever was lurking in the hallway. But the thought of opening that door and stepping out into the darkness was terrifying. "What if it's still out there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emma swallowed hard, her eyes wide with fear. "We have to take the chance." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I grabbed the small pocket knife I kept in my desk drawer. Not much, but it made me feel a little better having something to defend ourselves with. Emma found an old metal flashlight, the kind that could double as a club if necessary. "On three," I said, my voice trembling. 1, 2, 3. I unlocked the door and flung it open, my heart racing. Emma and I stepped into the hallway, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The wet footprints were still there, but now they were smeared, as if something had been dragged through them. We didn't waste any time. We ran down the hallway, past the smudged footprints, and toward the stairwell at the end of the corridor. I kept expecting to hear footsteps behind us, or worse, that dragging sound, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat and the rain against the windows. We made it to the stairs and hurried down, not stopping until we reached the lobby on the first floor. The power was still out, but there were a few emergency lights on, casting an eerie glow over the empty space. We stood there, gasping for breath, our hearts racing. For a moment, everything was quiet, and I thought maybe we'd escaped whatever had been in the hallway with us. But then Emma pointed toward the front door, her face pale. "Angela, look!" I turned and saw them, wet footprints leading from the front entrance, across the lobby, and disappearing into the shadows of the hallway. Whatever had been upstairs with us had come in from outside. Just then, the power flickered back on, and the lights buzzed to life. The sudden brightness was almost blinding after so much time in the dark. Emma and I looked at each other, both of us too shaken to speak. The wet footprints were still there, a grim reminder of whatever had been following us. We didn't wait around to find out if it would come back. We grabbed our things and ran out into the rain, not stopping until we were far from the dorm, far from whatever had knocked on our door that night. We never found out who or what was leaving those footprints. No one else in the building reported anything strange, and the security cameras didn't show anyone entering or leaving the building during the storm. It was like whatever had been there had vanished without a trace. But I know what I saw, and every time it rains, I can't help but think of that night. The wet footprints, the knocking, the sound of something dragging through the halls. Whatever it was, I hope I never see it again. But sometimes, late at night, when the storm clouds roll in and the rain starts to fall, I can't shake the feeling that it's still out there watching.